Welcome back. We are live, the fantasy football universe, the double FU, the FU times two. I am Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel. This is Jesse Moeller at JMoeller05. We are here live to talk a little bit about Christian McCaffrey signing an extension. He has now become, but he already was, but he's now become again the top paid running back in the league. Christian McCaffrey signs a massive extension. He's in San Francisco for another 2 years. Good news for him. Good news for the 49ers. Good news for his fantasy managers. Jesse, how you doing? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Like I was looking at my dynasty rankings and I'm like, should I update them? And I'm like, no, we're gonna leave where he's at. I think I'm RB4 or 5. Like he's right there. Yeah, as long as he's in San Francisco with this game in the system, like you've seen how they want to use him, and even if it's less touches, it doesn't matter. He's efficient. He's a monster. So yeah, this is good news for him. Good news from San Francisco. I do think it's interesting that Ayuk is the guy that they're like, I don't know, we'll pay you at some point in the future. Everyone else is paid on that team, so who knows what's going on with that? And then they have Brock Purdy coming up, but this is the short window that they have to try to maximize the 2-year window with McCaffrey and all these guys. So yeah, like congrats to them paying one of the best players in the NFL. Like it's just a good day to be a running back, which is a rare thing these days.
Yeah, it's a good day to be Christian McCaffrey as well. Signs an extension. It looks like about $38 million over the course of 2 years, which is $19 million a year, which he was making $16 million a year, which was $1 million more than the second highest paid running back in the league, Alvin Kamara, who signed a massive 5-year, $75 million year deal back in like 2023 or something, or 2019, 2020.
Yeah, 2020,
yeah. So, he's mostly through that deal at the moment. But Christian McCaffrey, again, was only $1 million above Kamara. Now he's, he's $4 million above Kamara per year. Jesse, you have any other details on that contract, or maybe what we were looking at before in terms of cap hits and things like that?
Yeah, so the biggest bonus, like we talk about, the average was like $14 million. By pushing the new money, it was they owed him 26. Now they push it to 38 million. What that does is that it significantly increases about the rest of the running backs. So you look at the cap hits. Kamara's contract is structured in a way the cap hit's going to be more significant. But average annual value and actual cash they're paying out, like McCaffrey is getting more of that because the Kamara stuff kind of got pushed down the road. McCaffrey, they're just pushing into it. So if you kind of understand contracts that make sense, it's a little bit confusing in the NFL because they have these workout bonuses and things of that nature. $8.5 million just became do it signing. And then April 1st next year, the rest of the $14.5 million kicks in. So basically, it's basically 100% guaranteed contract for 2 years. So yeah, it's a 2-year deal for McCaffrey, basically.
Yeah. And what's crazy is first of all, he's 29 years old at the moment. I'm not sure. I'll have to check to see if he's going to be 30 years old in season. That sounds about right. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey is getting up there in age. Why does that age feel totally wrong?
So he's 27. He turns 27. He turns 28. You're trying to age him out of the league already.
I'm trying to read track backwards and do math on the fly. Not working out for me. He's 27 years old. Let's not freak out. As I was just starting to freak out. He's 30. Anyway,
he turns 28 in 3 days. 3 days.
So he'll be 28 in season, 29 next season for sure. Not too old. I mean, we see Derrick Henry, who is more of a bigger back, obviously, who's more physical, and he's still playing, and we have high hopes for him in his age 30 season. At least we do at FFU. Most people do. I mean, the Ravens certainly do. But Christian McCaffrey, age 28 and 29 season, as someone who doesn't take as much punishment as Derrick Henry does. At least he's not someone who's looking for punishment on every play and utilize more out of the backfield. We imagine that his longevity is going to hold up at least for those 2 years. So talking about McCaffrey and kind of those 2 years, let's hit dynasty first. First of all, where do you have Christian McCaffrey in your dynasty rankings as of yesterday? And what are you thinking about? Are we moving him up any? Is he stuck where he is because of age? What are we thinking here?
Yeah, he's my RB4. So the only guys I have above him are the truly elite young guys, the Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Everybody else, I'm sorry, you're not making the cut. I don't care about Jonathan Taylor. I love Devon Achane, but he's below him. Saquon Barkley, even Jonathan Brooks, they're all below. I played a 2 to 3 year windows, so I'm not too worried about it. The one thing that McCaffrey has going against him is this age. But if you compare him to, say, Austin Eckler a few years ago, where he was this super efficient, fantasy back, the NFL clearly viewed him similarly different. They still did not want to pay him the type of money McCaffrey got. So McCaffrey is, in the eyes of everyone, he's a truly like generational talent. Things he could do, how he changes defense and stuff like that. So like I'm more confident in the way he's going to age out than we saw what happened to Austin Eckler, because people were worried about this with older backs. But like certain guys, McCaffrey, Henry, you just are like, you know what? These guys are truly special backs. Where we have Kamara starting to hit that regression where he's becoming like kind of a negative player on the field. We saw it with Eckler and these other guys. McCaffrey, Henry, these guys, like they're the special, truly special players from this last 10-year window where it's like, you know what? Like just you're okay betting on them because you see what they do is completely different than everybody else in the NFL.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree with you. I mean, he's also my dynasty RB4. I mean, this just solidifies that. I'm not going to move him above Gibbs. I mean, that's just that's crazy talk. I mean, maybe Gibbs at 3 is crazy talk, but I don't think so. I think that's pretty much consensus at this point. He's not above Bijan and Brees. But yeah, JT is kind of that gray area for me. I think JT is about to have a monster season with A-Rich and Steichen calling the plays and everything gelling for the Colts this year. But so is Christian McCaffrey. I mean, Christian McCaffrey
Yeah.
One thing he's going to do that JT and Henry and Barkley aren't going to do nearly as much is catch the football, be hyper targeted, and be efficient in those targets, right? The guys that are aging out, like Aaron Jones or Alvin Kamara, who we just mentioned earlier, those guys will be targeted, but are they going to be nearly as efficient as CMC with those targets and what he's able to convert and turn those into? And the answer is no. Part of that's his ability. He's just better than those guys. Another large part of that is Kyle Shanahan and exactly what he's going to scheme up with McCaffrey. And one thing that we know for sure, Christian McCaffrey is going to be on the field and he's going to see the ball a ton in this offense.
Yeah, like in last year, he had less targets, but his yards from scrimmage, he was at 126 yards from scrimmage, which is the second most he's had his year, besides the 2019, just ridiculous. Basically MVP pace besides Mahomes. Like 2019, that was the McCaffrey season where he was just ridiculous. Last year, he was awesome across the board. So he only had 83 like targets, which I say that jokingly because he's that good. He's just a focal point of the offense, and he's that good. So no matter who's all there, they added a first-round receiver in Pierce. I don't care. Like McCaffrey's gonna get all the touches possible. We'll see what happens with Debo and Ayuk and how it shifts out if one of them does that move on. That only works in McCaffrey's favor. It's like they're going to give him as many touches as he can handle, right? Because throughout his career, he's got 19 point. I think it's 8 touches per game. Last year, he was at 21.2. So he was right on that pace of his career. So, I mean, we're setting him up for another 20 touch per game season, which, well over 300 touches. Finishing, I mean, if he plays and healthy, he's going to be above everybody else. Like, maybe Bijan and Brees are the 2 guys that can possibly give you to the McCaffrey level. But theoretically, we still need to see it from those guys. Like, they have not come close to doing what McCaffrey has. And it's entirely possible. We'll see. But, like, until McCaffrey shows sign of decline or those guys do it, in redraft, it's like McCaffrey hands down. Like, there's no one that will give you the advantage McCaffrey has throughout his career. He's the best fantasy asset I've seen. And this includes Mahomes. I think he's a bigger advantage than Mahomes or any of those guys I've seen in fantasy since he's been in the league.
And you mentioned those stats, only 83 targets for 67 receptions, 564 yards, and 7 touchdowns through the air. That's basically like Paris Campbell's wet dream in terms of like to do on the field. And then just pile on top 272 carries for 1,459 yards and 14 rushing TDs. And what did San Francisco do this offseason? They drafted a couple backs. Oh, people are excited. Oh, Corey Schrader and the second round. Like, no, come on. This might mean the end for Elijah Moore. Who cares? Like Christian McCaffrey was already the end for Elijah Moore years ago. So, or not Elijah Moore. Who am I talking about?
Elijah Mitchell. Yeah, we've kind of we've forgotten about Elijah Mitchell. Unfortunately, it's just what it is when you're dealing with someone as talented as McCaffrey, who we saw it in college. Like he was that special player coming out. People were worried because he's 207 pounds, and he's like, guess what, guys? It doesn't matter. I'm just a special player, and it's like sometimes you just realize that these outliers. It's okay to bet on these guys that are outliers. So I'm okay investing, in Dynasty as second round startup pick in McCaffrey. I know not everyone's okay doing that, but like where I have him ranked, I'm fine pushing the button there. If you want to go win now and do that, because like we said, he's such a difference maker. And he's in an ideal situation where they could even give him less work, which they did the year before. He got a little less work and he was still like just dominant force where he was just giving you everything. So I have really no question marks about McCaffrey. Like he gets hurt, it doesn't matter. He still plays. Like he just does everything. He's the do it all back where he's this generation's Marshall Faulk is the way I describe it. Like he's that special, and I just love watching him play football, man.
Absolutely.
It's all of us.
Absolutely. So Cody Schrader, Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell. No. People are excited about Isaac Guerrero. I don't really know why. I mean, there's Christian McCaffrey is locked in here. Do we have any hope for Isaac Guerrero having some sort of weaponized like backfield weapon role here? Like, what is that?
Yeah, like maybe I don't want to talk about injuries too much, but the only way that happens if McCaffrey gets injured, like suffers a significant injury, right? Because Guerrendo's the side spree. He's JT without the stats. That's basically what Guerrero is, right? He's just the prototype of guy that you're like, I'm building this guy on Madden. He's got 99 speed. He's the ideal, like all that stuff. But then you watch him play and you're like, all right, you're obviously not what these stats that I've created tell you. Like he's a side spree. He needs to show us more before we can even get him. So sure, if you want to stash any one of these guys in Dynasty or redraft as a late round pick and hopefully McCaffrey gets injured, sure, you can go that route. But outside of that, like no one's taking a job from this guy. Yep. He's too special. And if anyone else like on the offense does get hurt because Kittle, Debo, he's got suffered injuries, it just means that McCaffrey gets more touches. So it's like it's set up for somehow even having a higher ceiling than he currently does, which is just insane to talk about. So yeah, it's going to be a fun year for McCaffrey for sure.
Crazy. Two quick redraft questions. Is he your number one overall pick in half PPR redraft?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's clear cut. Full PPR redraft. Is he your number one overall pick?
Yeah, because of the wide receivers, like we've having this debate. Like I'm not sure. Like I have Lamb there. If you want to go him one, sure. But like it's so close between those guys. Like McCaffrey, I know I'm getting an edge where like it's a drop off from him. So that's why standard's a little bit different because the catches don't count. But like any one of those formats, McCaffrey's gonna be my number one guy. Like he does it every year, man.
Who's your top tier then? It's Christian McCaffrey. Who else do you have in your top tier there where you would consider at the 101?
I'd say if you want to go for a wide receiver, I would either consider CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill. Like those would be the two guys. I have Justin Jefferson in that tier, but I'm not as bullish on him. So like you could say those would be the three big wide receivers for me. If you wanted to go one of those guys, I'm not going to make a fuss. So I'd say at worst, McCaffrey should be 4. Like in any draft, 4 should be the lowest you're pushing him down. And I've seen some people pushing him to 5 or 6, and I'm just like, all right, cool. If you're sitting in the middle draft and McCaffrey stared you in the face, like how do you turn that down? That's just too tempting. I'd be like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you.
And people have we've been talking about the fact that he's injury prone. Over the last 2 seasons, he's missed 1 game. So that's no longer an issue for Christian McCaffrey. I think injury prone as we know it or we talk about it is not really a thing. It's just that guys keep getting injured. I mean, the Christian Watson sort of injury proneness with those soft tissue hamstring injuries, that may actually be a thing to the point where you're going to specialists. But the fact that, CMC just blew up his knee, I think he had a shoulder at one point. He had a bunch of different injuries, but he played through most of them. His body was like, you need to rest, you need to stop. And it did for about 2 seasons. Now he's back in full effect, and the 49ers are just going to keep using him to pound the football. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think he has knee tendonitis or something, but like not significant enough to stop him from getting touches a game. So like that's all we're worried about. Yes, like
he's a monster. Question about the 49ers here and what you think they're going to look like this season in terms of their offense. We've had these whispers in the bushes since the draft. They want to move Debo. Maybe they're going to move Ayuk. You mentioned before we came on that, and the news broke that Ayuk now is holding out and he's not at mandatory minicamp. So what are we thinking here? It's post June 1. So, in terms of the new NFL season, right, the calendar has turned over. Teams can do what they want. They have some savings from cutting guys. It's not as big of a hit against the cap. Trades are more likely because teams can move their money around now. So what are we thinking? Are we thinking one of these big wide receivers gets moved? Do they sign Ayuk? Like, what are the 49ers doing here?
Well, yeah, like that's a tough spot. Like if you're going to trade for an Ayuk, you are going to have to absolutely unload the bag to get him too, right? Because we're seeing the high-end wide receivers go for that $30 million a year range type in there. Like obviously Jefferson said it at 35. I don't think Ayuk's going to get 35. He'll probably come in, similar to Amon-Ra or like AJ Brown or one of those guys. Similarly close, but like, yeah. So who's going to do it? So like maybe San Francisco or sorry, not San Francisco. Pittsburgh, we've heard them talking about that. Possible. I don't know. It's really hard for a team at this point, this late in the year, already having their draft or doing what they've done, to be like, all right, we're going to take that hit. Now we saw San Francisco do it a few years ago. when they were a win now contender. I don't know. I think a team should absolutely trade for Ayuk. I think a team like we talked about Jacksonville, I think they should have traded for Ayuk. I think that would have been a lot better move than to go Brian Thomas Jr. But the team's kind of made their bed in what they're going to do. So it's interesting. You need a team that already needs the wide receiver one. Like there's not that many guys, and I think you can fit anywhere. So yeah, I hope some team does. Like that's for fantasy. That's the way Ayuk gets truly unlocked, because in San Francisco with Kittle, Debo, McCaffrey, like it's just so tough. It's so hard. And when McCaffrey's such a target hog and volume hog, like the offense revolves around him, where these other guys ebb and flow with Kittle and Ayuk and Debo, like they'll pop off occasionally, but it's always McCaffrey. Like he's there every game. The other guys kind of go back and forth. So until Ayuk gets unlocked, like he's just a truly incredible player. In a great situation for NFL. Like it's fantastic. Like you see that's for fantasy. It's not what we want to see. So hopefully he can move on, and then he can hit that 1,500-yard season we're always hoping for Ayuk and be a true, a difference-making wide receiver, because there's no way in hell he's getting 1,500 yards in San Francisco. Like that's just not the range of outcomes when they throw it 450 times a season. Like it just doesn't work that way for him.
Well, I totally agree, except, if Kittle retires and they move Debo and, maybe.
There we go. maybe now we're cooking, baby. Now we're cooking. It's the CMC and Ayuk show.
An interesting bit of context here in terms of the projected cap for all NFL teams by Spotrac. Once roster cuts are made and they're down to their minimum number of roster to start the season, San Francisco is projected to have the 7th most cap space. So it kind of makes sense that they're going to extend Christian McCaffrey here. It kind of sounds like they have the money to pay Brandon Ayuk. And maybe they don't need to move Debo. Look, if I'm contending for a title as San Francisco is, I'm sure they don't want to move Debo Samuel. They're certainly not going to get the value. I heard Matt Waldman talking about this on his pod the other day, and he was mentioning the fact that, to move Debo Samuel, he fits so well in that offense. But, he only fits so well in some of these other offenses. There's only so many like Kyle Shanahan disciples out there who want to kind of utilize this gadget role to its fullest effect, right? So that's not really going to be in the cards. And if you're trying to line up Debo out wide and play him as a conventional wide receiver, I think you're losing a little bit of value in terms of what he can bring, right? If you're the Jets, you don't draft Malachi Corley because you want to line him up out wide. No, you want him to complement the number one there, Garrett Wilson. So Debo is a complementary receiver, excellent. We can talk all about his fantasy value. I don't want to, because I don't want Debo in fantasy at all, as good as he is, because you just don't know what you're getting. But you do want Christian McCaffrey. He's an absolute monster, and he's locked up for 2 more years in San Francisco. Any other final thoughts here on CMC? Maybe what we can expect in terms of, output, maybe, what you might do to acquire CMC if you're going for it all this season, even though we wouldn't probably recommend acquiring a running back in early June in Dynasty, or on the flip side, if somebody comes to you with an offer, what's it going to take for you to unload CMC? What are you looking for? What do you think is fair value?
Yeah, if I'm trading away CMC, what I'm saying is I don't view myself as a contender, because if you're a contender this year and you have CMC, like he's the biggest difference maker there is in fantasy, like above the quarterbacks. Like you can maybe make the case Josh Allen's the other guy that's like going to give you that high end, truly record breaking. So, I mean, it's really hard to talk. Like I have CMC on a couple teams. 2 years ago, I traded him for Drake London and a first. And like, I still feel pretty terrible about that deal.
Yeah.
My team won, but man, Drake London sucked. And that first round was late. So it's just like, it's one of those things we talk about. Like now, like you could make the move for a Drake London or like a wide receiver you view having that truly difference making impact, but it's got to be a guy that you see could be a difference maker. Because if you're trading him for, let's just talk like Tank Dell at the moment, or one of these guys that's in a situation that they're not going to be a difference maker, you're going to hurt your team. I know we love these wide receivers, but like I'll talk about this tonight on my show, like how the wide receiver market's a bubble and there's so many guys that are valued. Like if say you traded for Zay Flowers, like is your team going to be better long term? Like probably not, because Zay Flowers is not going to give you 20 points per game, right? So this is the whole thing with Christian McCaffrey. Like he's one of those guys that I think we should value differently, even though he's older, because nobody gives you that impact. And when it comes down to it, winning is what matters. Like we love these draft teams, all these young players, but like nobody is more impactful than Christian McCaffrey. And like I've seen it, we'll keep seeing it with McCaffrey. Like you could trade him, and he could have 2 more RB1 seasons in a row. Like, that's just how good McCaffrey is. Or worst case, like RB5. And you're like, oh no, I got the RB5, and you have a guy putting up 12 points per game in your wide receiver 3. It's just like, it's really not the same. So I think we kind of need to reassess the wide receiver market. But yeah, like any one of those top 20 wide receivers, pick your guy, see if you can get a plus, or maybe you go get a Kyle Pitts and like a difference-making tight end, try to do that. But outside of that, I'm really not interested in trading. What's your kind of value on CMC? What would it take for you to trade him more?
I'll do the deal that you did 2 years ago and Drake London in a first. Give me that right now.
Yes.
Drake London, my wide receiver 8 in Dynasty, Jesse's wide receiver 7. Mm-hmm. Let's go, Drake London. Absolutely big on him and his breakout incoming is a third year breakout for Drake London incoming. Yes. What we're predicting here. So with Kirk Cousins, I would take that in a heartbeat. If you can get 2 firsts, mid-level firsts in value for Christian McCaffrey, I'll move him. I think if you're talking about 2 back-end firsts, I'll probably hold and just wait until someone is desperate enough in season to make a move like a London and a first to get that value, because it's going to be another monster season for Christian McCaffrey. So if you get an offer that blows the doors off and you just want to smash it in case he gets injured or, God forbid something happens, then go ahead. If the offer is not good enough to, hold him. He's going to produce as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I know we talk about like getting off of these highly valued assets. Like, that's kind of what I'm talking about with Laporta. The difference is I know if McCaffrey's healthy, I know what he's going to give me. My worry about Laporta is like he's just overvalued because I don't think he can give you that value that he's currently valued at. Like McCaffrey, I know what you're getting. Like, we've seen it every time he's been in the league. He was RB10 his rookie year. Ever since then, on points per game basis, the dude's just been an absolute monster. So you know what you're getting with him. The fall off will happen. Like, I'm not saying he's eternal. Like, Father Time will win out, but I am okay like riding him into the sunset for the next couple of years. And even as he like slowly regresses, the way his skill set is, he's still going to be a pass catching back who gives you, who could be the specialist long term. And so like you can ride him out and be fine with it. I don't think you're going to kill yourself. But if you want to test the market, go get the wide receivers or see if you can upgrade at quarterback or do whatever you can to get truly different assets. Like if you can do that, go do it. I don't know like where we're at. It might have to be in season like you're talking about doing, where teams are, they're looking at their roster. They have like 6 really good wide receivers. Go do that deal if you're not winning. And then that makes sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we are the Fantasy Football Universe. This is Jesse Moeller at jmoeller05. I am Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel on Twitter. You can find us everywhere. Twitter, we have our own website at .com. You can find us on TikTok. We have a lot going on. YouTube is the big one we're trying to pumping out daily content over here at the FFU for you, hitting on breaking news as quickly as we can as it happens. And this particular one talking about Christian McCaffrey. So please check us out on all our channels, like, subscribe, whatever you want. But, just engage with us. We're interested in kind of growing this both internally as a community and just talking fantasy with people, because it's what we love to do. So for this guy, this has been the Fantasy Football Universe. We will see you next time.